This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn Kanungo. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey everyone, my name is Shawn Kanungo. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. On this podcast, what we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life, change your business, your career, but most importantly, your life. And I'm incredibly excited that you're here with me today. As always, I brought some incredible clips that are around branding and marketing and AI. This seems to be the intersection of what this podcast is all about. And these are some dangerous ideas that other people have brought that I hope that are going to change your career, your life, but most importantly, really your career. This is really more about your career than anything else. I actually think that these clips are going to be incredibly important if you own a company, if you're a marketer, if you're an AI, or if you want to figure out what the future trends are going forward. Now, one of the beautiful things about being a connoisseur of content, being someone that consumes all this content, is that I get to be a great filter for you, taking a look at all this content that people are creating around the world and distilling the key, most provocative insights from everyone. So I'm going to start with this particular clip. Now, if you own a company, this is the hottest take from one of the most important people on the internet of all time. This take is the reason why I left my company that I was with for 12 years. This is a clip from Marc Andreessen, who's part of A16Z. I'm talking about the shift from institutions to individuals. And I think that his take might be one of the hottest takes that we've heard on this pod. Let's break it down.
If you open everything up and everybody can publish and everybody can debate and everybody can be present and everybody can, and then you have these, individual, influencers, with 200 million followers and all this stuff, like all of a sudden you have this completely different method of communicating with an audience that can be much more based on personality, right? So authenticity, transparency, and then personality, right? That there can actually be a human being. And then it just happens, like, because your audience always consists of people relate much more to other people than they relate to a corporation, right? And so as an individual, am I going to feel a stronger emotional affinity to like a person who I follow or to some like disembodied corporation with an office tower in New York City? And if the communication bandwidth is there where I can interact with both of them, of course, I'm going to have a lot more affinity for the people. And so I think I'm sort of a radical in this. I think the whole idea of like corporate brands is basically just like they're on their way out. Like it's just as a concept, it just doesn't make sense in the new media environment.
The whole idea of corporate brands is out. It's outdated. It's finished. This is one of the most important people in tech, in VC, Andreessen Horowitz, Marc Andreessen, saying that the idea of corporate brands is over. And, if you break down what's happening, he's basically talking about this shift from this top-down media to peer-to-peer media. For decades, the way that we consume products and services were through these corporate entities. The way that they marketed themselves were through these traditional methods, whether it's newspapers or billboards or television ads. And what's happened because of the democratization of media, because of soon to be AI, it's the way that attention is consumed has completely been fragmented. And, this is the reason why I left the company that I was at for 12 years. It's because of this reason. It was the thesis as to why I left the company. It's a thesis as to why I wrote this book called The Bold Ones. It was this shift from institutions to individuals. Now, I wish I had this hot take in my book, which is that the idea of corporate brands is over. But it is true. Like if you look, look across the media landscape today, look across at what's happening around companies today. The most obvious example is seeing what's happening with Elon and Tesla. The reason why Tesla stock has fluctuated so much over this last year is because of Elon Musk's brand. Elon Musk is tied to Tesla. And when Elon Musk's brand is doing well, guess what? So does Tesla. And actually, the board of Tesla is really trying to figure out, how do we separate the Elon brand from Tesla? If you see what's happening with Feastables from Mr. Beast, it topped about $250 million last year in annual sales. If you saw what happened with Taylor Swift and her Eras tour generating over $10 billion in global revenue. Listen, look across every medium that the shift is happening from institutions to individuals. So what does this mean for organizations? Like I fundamentally believe that the erosion of centralized brands is moving to, if you are a brand today, how do we start to highlight the individuals within your organization? It's funny because I had a keynote with Deloitte a number of weeks ago, and one of the things that I mentioned was this idea that the firm has been around for over 100 years, but we are moving to a world where it's really about the individuals. It's really about people building trust and an affinity with their particular clients. People want to work with people at the end of the day. And yes, the firm is important and the brand name is important, but really people want to work with highly talented, relevant, cutting edge type of individuals. So how do we continue to market and be those individuals? If you see what, another common example is, look at Ronaldo. So Cristiano Ronaldo, who is basically at the end of his career, just signed the biggest contract in all of sports with Al Nassr, which is in the Saudi league. I think this guy is getting like almost $500 million over the next couple of years, and an equity stake in the organization. And part of the reason why they've invested so much money into Ronaldo is not because of his game. It's because he brings credibility, he brings authority, and he brings eyeballs to this entire sport and this entire league for the Saudi league. And so it just shows you that we are shifting to individuals. Now, what's interesting is that although we are moving to this world of to individuals, something else is happening that I find incredibly interesting when it comes to marketing today, and it's actually counter to this influencer or celebrity movement. So I'm almost contradicting myself, and I'm contradicting Marc Andreessen with this another clip that I'm about to drop, and I think this is really, really important because the game is moving very quickly. And I think when you watch this clip, I will break down what is, where Marc Andreessen and this individual are right and maybe where they're wrong. So this clip is from Brian Blum, who has a company called Nibble. And his podcast is one of the podcasts that I now consume on a daily basis, which is called Sweat Equity. They break down brand and marketing and basically culture. And I thought this clip was incredibly powerful in terms of the way that organizations will be marketing in the future, leveraging social media. Let's drop the clip.
And this is like a completely new form of influencer marketing. You used to want to send product to, a big creator, right? Like if you're a basketball brand, Bronny James, LeBron's son, would theoretically be the perfect influencer for you. Now, I don't think you would ever want to work with him. You would want to work with 1,000 parents of kids who play basketball for their testimonial. So it's completely flipped in terms of where you want to invest those dollars. But another thing that a lot of brands discount is the concept of earned media value and marketing touchpoints. So this one is why I think the concept of future proof is super important, because it's a framing that not a lot of people have probably thought about. At any given point, not everyone is in the market for your products. We've talked about this on previous episodes. Your job is to be in front of them so that they're aware of you when they're in market, when they're ready to buy. So you want to leave a positive impression when that happens. So how do you do that? This used to be billboards. This used to be TV commercials. And you'd actually be shocked. I looked it up recently. The amount, it's still $60 billion being spent on TV ads. That's, psychotic. And obviously smaller than probably Meta's revenue. But just think about that, right? Like $60 billion of spend has yet to even embrace the truth, which is that TV is completely cooked and everyone's watching YouTube on their TV and second screening while they're doing this. So like you almost have to, as a brand owner, take a step back and think like, what are my personal habits? What is my, 31-year-old cousin doing? What is my 18-year-old nephew doing? Whatever it is. And start thinking about like, oh my gosh, people's behaviors are completely different. Marketing touch points are no longer, seeing me on a TV, seeing me on a billboard. Like those things are dead, right? So where are you going to see people? Well, most people are averaging around, 3 hours a day on social media. They're spending an eighth of their time a day on social media. TikTok average use is like 65 minutes. Instagram is around there. YouTube, same. So your sole goal should be to appear in front of people authentically, organically on the social platforms.
So I love that clip. And the reason why I dropped this clip is that this strategy is actually disrupting me. As a thought leader, as an influencer that does brand deals as well, like this strategy is also disrupting me. The fact that the democratization of attention, the democratization of media is getting to a point where the individual content clips are becoming more and having, regular people post content about your brand is completely disrupting how we look at marketing. So let me try to break this down. You see, Marc Andreessen is talking about this democratization of media, and so is Brian Blum. They're both talking about the fact that that attention is being fragmented. And I think what Brian does is that he's taking this one step further to reinforce the fact that not only we democratizing media, but it's moving past the influencer and creator stage, so that it's really about the content, and it's about individuals creating content around a particular idea or brand or individual, and that blowing up. And so his strategy that, instead of paying Bronny James to help promote a product or service, it's like, why don't we get 1,000 people to create content around, our product or service? So it's like the attention is becoming even more atomized. The other thing that I think is interesting is that in a world where everything becomes actually atomized, that corporate brands in a way become more relevant. And I'm talking about the big incumbent organizations. Because when you atomize all this content, what you're ultimately doing is you're sucking out the meat and the context and the trust. So paradoxically, that in a world where corporate brands are fading, and even if creators, their influence is fading, what happens is that these big brands, they will signal trust. The big brands like Nike and LVMH and Adidas and General Mills, they will garner more trust because consumers will look at this incredibly crowded landscape and they will want to attach themselves to something that they already know, like, and trust at the end of the day. So the cycle of disruption when it comes to media is unprecedented. I don't think that there is another sector that is more disrupted in terms of the cycles of disruption than media. And to Brian's point, I actually tested this out. I actually tested a strategy using this even more democratized way of distributing content. So this was my experiment. I went on this platform called WAP. So WAP is a platform which is essentially getting a whole bunch of clippers together to clip up your content. And I put a budget for $5,000, and I got this incredible kid out of high school. His name is Azan. In fact, I don't think he's actually ever been paid for a project like this before, because there was no invoice and there was no structure to it. So I'm basically paying this kid out of high school to become a community manager for my clipping community. And the reason why I want to do this is to basically run it as an experiment. What would this $5,000 budget do to proliferating my content out there? And so what people did is they took my content and they made videos out of it. And I had some guidance around what they should do, but really it was them sort of going, buck wild. We had hundreds of people submitting videos of them watching my content, reacting to my content. And I thought it was really interesting. Now, ultimately, I don't think the campaign was designed in the best way possible, so I kind of burnt the $5,000. But what I learned by doing this was this idea that there are thousands of people that are willing to clip up content for someone that they don't know and they don't recognize, because they're getting compensated on those clips. And I can't help but think that this is going to be the future of how brands will build. Like if I had a t-shirt company, the way that I would build this brand up today in 2025 is not going to Emma Chamberlain and trying to make a deal with her to sponsor my t-shirt company, or going to another influencer creator. I think that the way that I would do this is I would seed 1,000 people with my t-shirt and get them to create content around my t-shirt, and so that the broad awareness of it will just create winners. There's this power law game that's happening in attention in the media landscape, where roughly 5% of videos or posts will generate 95% of the results. So it actually means that by putting out a whole bunch of content and by testing out a whole bunch of content, you can actually find a winner. And once you find a winner, then you can go off and amplify that. I recently spoke with a friend of mine. His name is Sam Dema, and he actually blew my mind around how he's approaching his social media. What he's doing is he's actually testing his material on TikTok as an A/B test with different hooks and different ideas, and then he's taking the winner from TikTok and then putting it on Instagram and YouTube. And he's grown exponentially because of this strategy. And it's really this idea that volume is more important than perfection. It's this idea that by iteratively, by being creative and having that creative iteration is what's going to win at the end of the day. And so I think this is a fundamentally new way of how brands can market themselves. And I think it's exciting because now, I've always said this, is that content is a lottery ticket. It increases your surface area for getting lucky. Every time that you put out a piece of content, you have no idea who's going to watch it and the opportunities that are going to come to you. So, Marc Andreessen, Brian Blum, talking about what the future of brands and companies is going to look like. They're almost opposing views, but super interesting and a highly disruptive space. So, let's keep following it as we move along and as you guys listen to this pod. So, this next clip is from somebody that I've dropped in this pod many times, and for anyone that is a new grad, this might be one of the most important pieces of advice that you'll hear for your career. Scott Galloway got a question on his podcast with Kara Swisher called Pivot, where he talks about the most important skill required in an AI world. And this is what he said.
Have a decent grounding in communications and the sciences and history and the same old stuff. Now, do you unnaturally push them towards computer science, as a lot of people were doing, knowing that a lot of those jobs are probably going to go away unless they're naturally drawn to it? Sure. But I don't think we can, I think it's unhealthy to try and predict the future and push your kids one way or the other. I remember in private schools in New York when everyone was forcing their kids to take Mandarin, thinking that China was taking over. And I think removing one of the biggest mistakes we did in public schools was removing civics and wood shop and auto shop and metal shop and replacing it with computer science. And you end up with Mark Zuckerberg and less patriotism and also less young people, specifically young men who have the skills to go get vocational work. But I think what you do is you just encourage your kids to find stuff they're interested in, make sure they have a good grounding or some grounding in, reading, writing, arithmetic, all that stuff. But I think trying to predict the future around what jobs will be there and which ones won't, I think it's a fool's errand. I think you're just as likely to be wrong. And also, we like to think of ourselves as parents, as engineers, that we engineer the sheep. And we're not. We're shepherds. We can decide where they graze. We can point them in one direction. We kind of get some influence on what they eat, but they come to you.
Yeah. It's, I think the first part of this conversation was the most important skill for Scott Galloway when it comes to this AI world is communication skills, the ability to communicate, to look someone in the eye, to deliver a story is actually the most important skill in the world. I think his second point is this idea that we can't predict the future. We get so romantic about putting our kids into certain fields, and the reality is that we have no idea which industries, which jobs will be relevant in the future. And that's okay. I think the future is absolutely going to be more uncertain than ever before. It is more exponential than ever before. And I get it. Because of the exponential nature of artificial intelligence and technology, it makes people feel uncomfortable because, a number of decades ago, if your child went into law, you kind of had an idea of where they were going to go. Or if your child took a certain, if they become an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, you kind of knew where they would end up. But today, there is so much uncertainty because of what industries will be relevant in the future, but that there is a lot of anxiety. And it's funny because people always, I have this like sick fascination, and if you've been listening to this pod, you know this already, that I keep going back to people trying to give advice to their kids about what they should be doing in the future. And this is like a really important question for me because I love to learn from others to see what they're telling their kids. As somebody with 3 children, like I'm thinking about this all day long. And I don't think a single person has actually given a good response to, what people should be doing in the future other than find something that you love to do. And I think that this may be controversial, but I fundamentally believe that the most valuable person in any business can actually be like a new grad. And I know new grads are worried. People in university are worried about what their job prospects are going to be coming into, a new industry or, a new world. And I actually believe that if you learn these AI skills as a young person, you can actually usurp the people that have been within an organization for 5, 6, 7 years. Like, I would rather hire somebody that is like technically versed with all these AI tools than somebody that is, has had some really good schooling. They have a couple of years of experience, but don't understand or have any interest in looking at these AI tools. You're going to leapfrog a lot of these individuals if you actually dedicate your time to learning and being proficient and building a muscle with these AI tools. It's interesting. I had a conversation with my niece yesterday, and she's going into grade 11. And to me, the conversation with her was really fascinating because, for the last number of years, she's wanted to become a software engineer, like a computer programmer. And she took coding boot camps and she was put into that, and her dad told her to do that. And she's so savvy now that she's like, I don't think I want to do that anymore because I don't think that I'm going to get a job coming out of school by being a programmer. And so she shifted to, her passion has shifted to optometry, which, I think optometry will still be around. But what's wild is that she's in grade 11 and she's already talking about the impact of artificial intelligence to her future job prospects. So if you think that parents have anxiety around what their kids are going to do, it's already being passed on to the kids, because the kids are already thinking, and she literally said, I'm trying to think about what jobs will not be impacted by AI. And what was beautiful is that her sister was sitting right beside her, and I asked her, I said, Arya, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she was like, I want to be an astronaut. And I thought, incredible, because we need more astronauts, okay? We need less people doing this thing, podcasting, and we need more people going to like space and doing cool things. So I'm incredibly bullish for the future. But the punchline is that, my niece going into grade 11 is already thinking about what jobs will not be replaced by AI. And she's already pivoted her future career, which she thought would be in programming, to, something a little bit more secure, like optometry. Well, secure for now. I don't know where that space is going to go. But for the most part, I think you'll probably still need an optometrist, at least in the next 10 years. I say that because I have no idea what the future is going to look like. I don't know. I don't have any idea what industries will be relevant in the future. But I do know this, is that, if you're a new grad, you can actually leap your competitors, your counterparts. You can leap the people that are within their existing organizations already if you develop a proficiency around some of these AI tools. And I think the advice of following your passion and doing something that you love and doing something that you're interested in is still incredible advice, because at the end of the day, if you care, if you are obsessed about something, at the end of the day, you will be world class. So this next clip is from the CEO and co-founder of 11 Labs. This is a company that I use pretty often, and they're a text-to-voice application. And this is from a gentleman named Matti Staniszewski. And he was on the Sequoia Capital podcast recently talking about the impact of voice. Obviously, he's in the voice AI space, and I thought what he said was incredibly interesting, and I'll tell you why it is so deeply personal to me.
And like taking a step back, what we think and believe from kind of the start is voice will fundamentally be the interface for interacting with technology. It would be one of the most, it's probably the modality we've known from when the human in general was born, as the kind of first way the humans interacted. And it carries just so much more than text does. Like it carries the emotions, the intonation, the imperfections. We can understand each other. We can, based on the emotional cues, respond in a very different ways. So that's where our start happened, where we think the voice will be that interface, and build not just the text-to-speech element, but seeing our clients try to use the text-to-speech and do the whole conversational application. Can we provide them a solution that helps them abstract this away?
You know what? I built an entire company after I left the firm to build a company that was based on voice. Now, the beautiful part about building a company is that it's all based on timing. The thesis for me was that voice was going to become the next interface, that the next billion-dollar companies would be built on top of voice, that would be the new UI. The problem is that when I started, I built the company around the current horses that were out there, which were Alexa, Google, and Siri. And as it turns out that they're all idiots. Even still to this day, they're still idiots. And seeing how good 11 Labs, ChatGPT, Sesame, Grok AI, even using Claude voice AI. I mean, they're way, way, way better than Alexa and Siri. And so I bet on the wrong horse. But the reality is that I believe that what voice is going to end up doing is that it's going to help us remove the friction in terms of getting an idea to whatever you want. And that was always the insight, is that the less time that you actually take using any software or any application, the better. And I believe that actually, voice is becoming already one of the hottest ways of getting your ideas across. Like, honestly, the way that I use AI today is I just voice the prompt now. What I do is I try to give it like 3 or 4 minutes of context, and I just voice in the prompt, and I say, hey, design an AI prompt based on all these things that I'm thinking about. And then the AI will give me a prompt, and then I use that prompt to then use it in the O3 ChatGPT model, or I'll use it for a deep research function in Claude or Grok or OpenAI. And that's how I use AI today. And it starts by voice. And my belief is that no matter how old you are, whether you're 3 years old or you are 95 years old, voice will become the easiest thing to use. And so you're already seeing it where more and more people are using it, and it is inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. As an accountant, as a salesperson, the way that you interact with your software is simply through voice. You just ask the agent, hey, what do my sales forecasts look like for the next 3 quarters? Or name me the last 3 contracts that were over $1 million that are still to be paid. Like the level of specificity, the level of just how good these AIs are getting in terms of taking your voice and turning it into a prompt or something that's useful is absolutely incredible. I actually think that the most underrated voice tool out there is from Apple. Voice memo on Apple is incredible because it gives you a transcription right away. And basically what I do is I'll walk around and I'll just put something into voice memo and essentially use the transcript and then put that transcript into OpenAI or Claude, and it will help dissect the insights from that. So absolutely, voice is the next interface, and the technology is finally here. Now, as somebody that has built a company in this particular space and ran it for a number of years, and was deep into the voice AI landscape. The reason why I'm so excited the reason why I've always been excited about it is because of how easy it is for everyone to use. And at the end of the day, as human beings, we will always choose something that is more convenient and fast and seamless and reliable. And the fact that these things are getting so good is the reason why it is absolutely going to be the next interface. So I love this piece because it was nostalgic for me. I'm glad that I actually didn't continue on with the company because I think I was way too early. I was literally like 7 years a little bit too early. And I think 7 years later, I would have been smoked by ChatGPT. It would have just gobbled up my entire company. I don't know. Maybe I would have gone into a different space. I'm not sure. So let's get to a beef that I have with some people. In our last podcast episode, which happened a number of weeks ago, we had a viral post around Connor McDavid, and people were angry. People were angry in the post. People were angry on TikTok. And they were angry on TikTok because I said that Connor McDavid is not a superstar. Connor McDavid is not a star. And I don't know why people got angry about it. I will double down and triple down on the take, is that Connor McDavid is not a superstar. He is the greatest player to ever play the game of hockey, other than Wayne Gretzky, in my opinion. He is the best player in the NHL right now. He is the most exciting player of all time. But he's not a global superstar. He's not a superstar. The vast majority of the world has no idea who Connor McDavid is. And this is not a slight on Connor McDavid. This is not a slight on who he is as a player and what he represents. The reality is, if you actually take a step back globally, the NHL's footprint is actually very small. In fact, the last time ESPN did this poll, no NHL player actually in the history of doing this poll has ever reached the ESPN's World Fame 100. And Connor McDavid would still not reach the ESPN World Fame 100 if they ran the results back here in 2025. The reality is he doesn't even touch it. If you look at the declining numbers of the NHL, yes, they've grown in revenue, but they haven't grown in revenue in comparison to other leagues. If you look at youth participation in hockey over the last number of years, it's actually fallen in the last 15 years by 20%. If you look at the NHL viewership trends, it's actually been lackluster globally. You would think that the greatest player on the planet this year in the Stanley Cup Finals for the second year in a row with a really great narrative, I really couldn't pull viewership together. And it's the idea that Connor McDavid, although he's the most exciting player in the league, he's just not a star. And again, that's not a slight on his gameplay or who he is as an individual. It's just, it is what it is. He doesn't have the cachet, he doesn't have the X factor, and he doesn't have the the X factor to become a global superstar. And the reality is that, yeah, hockey is a niche sport, but so is the WNBA. The WNBA is a niche sport, but Caitlin Clark is a superstar. She would be on the ESPN World Fame 100, absolutely. And so people are really angry with this take, but I'm not looking at this from a sports perspective. I'm looking at this from a cultural perspective and taking a zoom out. And reality is that hockey is a niche sport. I love hockey. I live in Edmonton. It's great. But guys, it's Connor McDavid is not a superstar. It is what it is. So that's just my beef with people in the comment section. And what I love doing at the end of this pod, by the way, is talking about some hot takes that are happening in the world. I just want to say, as somebody that has mentioned Drake on this podcast many times, I'm just so happy that he's back. I think he did something really cool, something very innovative with his last music video. It was called "What Did I Miss?" And great song, beautiful song. We'll see if it gets to the Billboard #1 chart. And I think it would tie him for Michael Jackson's record for most #1 hits, or it may surpass him. I'm not really sure. But listen, Drake has all the records. I thought what was really interesting is that Drake understands culture really well. He basically he actually streamed this video of his music video. He streamed it. And he also took a truck in Toronto with an Iceman. His album is called Iceman. He took a truck that says The Iceman, and he was driving it in Toronto. And it was like part music video, part streaming thing, like really super innovative. And I'm going to give him props because Drake always knows where the puck is going. He understands who's hot in the music industry. That's why he collaborates with who's hot. He understands that the next platform, the next wave is streamers. And that's why he streams, and he's really tight with a guy named Aiden Ross and Kai Cenat. Like he's legitimately friends with them. And with his wireless festival that's happening in London this weekend, he's actually bringing out a whole bunch of streamers to that festival, and it makes sense. Like, he just understands culture. And if you go back to, the Hotline Bling, and this is why he's the GOAT. If you go back to Hotline Bling, the way that he did that music video was all about, he just created, people just created memes out of Hotline Bling. If you look at to see what he's done with, when COVID happened, he had this music video called it's called the Tootsie slide or Tootsie slide. And he made a whole dance out of it because TikTok was really blowing up with all those dances at the time. Like, he just understands culture. So that's just a shout out to Drake. Like, this guy is, this is why he's the greatest artist of all time, is that he understands what people want. And yes, he lost the battle against Kendrick Lamar, but this is beautiful. It's beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see someone innovate. That's just it, okay? I love people seeing innovate. So listen, this is the pod. We talked about brand. We talked about marketing. We talked about AI. We talked about Connor McDavid and a little bit of Drake. This has got to be the greatest pod ever. So thank you so much for rocking with me. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. Rate, subscribe, review, whatever you got to do with the pod, and we will see you on the next one.